Hello, it's Chloe Bruce, the gas journalist again. I'm here to, I said in earlier videos, in relation to my diagnosis of schizophrenia, how traumatic events in your life interplay, and the environment is very important as a factor in schizophrenia. Maybe there is some hereditary, but I don't think that's been particularly established as a firm fact yet. No one's really discussed this with me, except informally. And so today I just want to talk about some specific traumatic events in my life. I've already discussed this somewhat, and I've had some peculiar experiences, and I will discuss this now. These are all the kinds of things that, in my case, caused and promoted mental distress rather. So I've already discussed how I was sexually abused as a child, and not on one occasion, or more than one occasion, and how I was raped when I was in my, well, not raped, but severely sexually assaulted when I was in my late teens. And I've already discussed this. And now I'd like to talk about some other issues. I've discussed how these particular issues, my sexual abuse and sexual assault, these issues resurfaced during my first psychotic episode. And I can now see how these ideas that I had in this psychosis interplayed with these particular life experiences. It's a firm fact. I can literally see the trains of thought I had and some of the metaphors involved in my mind. But anyway, I discussed how I returned to Vienna, and it so happened that I saw a doctor out there, a doctor of psychiatry, and she refuted the diagnosis of schizophrenia that had been given to me in London, and said it was more likely bipolar affective disorder. And I disagreed with this assessment. It's easy to project your own moods into other people, and I disagree. It can't possibly be that I've ever had severe mood symptoms. I rarely get depressed. I've never been clinically depressed or diagnosed with clinical depression ever. And I sleep like the dead. I sleep 12 to 14 hours a day usually. And when I was working, I would have to sleep a lot at night. Here in Vienna it was easier because I worked from home. But when I was going out to the office, obviously I got very tired. And I'm someone who's prone to daytime sleeping, and I have a sleep disorder. I get sleep paralysis and other phenomena in the night. This has improved markedly recently. But no one really knows why some of these things occur, and life experiences and the environment are obviously cited often as a cause of some of these unexplained issues that you just sort of have. Anyway, I couldn't possibly be manic. I've barely missed a day's sleep in my life. It's extremely rare for me to not sleep. I don't rush around doing things. As you can see in the Stacey Dooley footage, I'm just lying quietly. I don't know why people have to accuse me of being manic. It's probably their own problem, really. People project all the time. I'm not dismissing these symptoms because of epilepsy. I know what it's like to have certain moods, but actually it's ignorant to actually assume a diagnosis when that person couldn't possibly fit those criteria. Anyway, so she put me on all these medications that didn't suit me at all, and I had horrific side effects, and I tried to complain about these, and I think she's accused me of being aggressive because I literally couldn't stand this therapy after a while. I literally couldn't stand all the drugs I was on. I was on several drugs. I was on at least 3 extremely potent drugs. She put me on the highest dose, and I was sleeping 8-10 hours a night. She was putting me on the highest dose nearly of a bipolar affective disorder medication. And anyway, the consequence of this is I had I'm clearly seizure prone, and this turned out to be the case. I got iller and iller and tried to explain this to her, and she would just go, ah! And I don't know why she had to do that, but anyway, she felt like doing it and did. So I had a grand mal seizure, which I've discussed before, in a shop and in Vienna, and I was taken into hospital. I fell backwards and I cut the back of my head open. I had stitches there. I bit my tongue and had blood on my tongue and lacerations there. And luckily I didn't urinate in this fit. And I had a nice paramedic came, and I think it was a doctor came to the scene also, and I came round, and it was a very weird experience. I can't remember the fit, but I remember the lead up to it. I remember just getting more and more out of it, and I remember sort of collapsing. I saw a man sort of follow, and I thought, who is it? And I thought he was sort of walking away. And then I heard, this is quite sad. I had, as you know, this diagnosis of schizophrenia that was haunting me, and there's a lot of stigma. And as I started to lose consciousness and was about to fall back, I was wobbling, walking around, this shop, and luckily I was in a public area, and I heard someone sort of say something like schizo, and I thought, my last thoughts before I had this fit were someone saying you're schizo, and that was literally my last thought. And I thought, now I had a language barrier. I knew a little German but not much, and I think it might have been, she was saying like sitzen is the verb to sit in German, and it might have been someone kindly saying sit, but you just don't understand at that point. My last thoughts were someone's yelling schizo at me. And also I don't agree with anyone abbreviating an illness to psych in the way Stacey Dooley did. It's not actually, it might mean in strictly speaking psychiatric, but it can also be short for psycho, and I don't really know if she's sort of decided to make it a kind of pop science in some sense. She should actually maybe talk a bit more grammatically about psychiatric illness. Anyway, that's my opinion. Other people might have theirs. But anyway, I was in hospital for some nights, and the surgeons there withdrew this dangerous combination of drugs, and I returned to the drug that had previously suited me, which is for schizophrenia, but I do understand it might also help moods. So it's ideal. If I were to have moods, it's very good for me, but on the whole I'm not prone in any way, shape or form. Anyway, I get upset like anyone. I don't really know why you can't cry without people saying you're depressed. It might just be you're processing the issue. Anyway, I changed doctor, as you can imagine, and got back onto my usual drug, which is also for schizophrenia, and just endured the weight gain from it, which is one of the side effects I have, but I have to just endure that if it happens and watch it if I can, and if I'm able to, my weight I mean. And anyway, about a year later I kept struggling with seizures, and I had myoclonia as also, and I was sometimes having 100 seizures a night. You just jerk up, you jerk, and then you wake up, and then you jerk, and I just couldn't sleep, not for mania. I wanted to sleep, I was very tired. I literally was just jerking awake. Luckily, I was given a 5-day video EEG, which is when you lie in hospital and you have sort of, I don't know what, the nodes sort of attached to your scalp, and they look permanently. They don't take it off for the whole duration of your stay there, and it's not uncomfortable in particular. Luckily, I can sleep well, and they witness the fact that I just slept all the time, and they were able then to look at me to see if I had seizures that I wasn't aware of. That wouldn't be picked up in just a simple EEG, and they identified a seizure that I had during the night, and I didn't move apparently, but they can see it because they literally, the reason it's called a video EEG, it's not I think it's not that they look into your brain specifically, it's because you literally have video cameras on you the whole time, and these video cameras are there to see the movements you make if you should have a fit, and these are important for diagnosis as I understand it. And I didn't move, but they recorded a positive EEG reading for primary generalised epilepsy, which they felt was my syndrome. And they were very nice to me about it, and they discussed it a lot. And if I understood correctly with the language barrier, my neurologist, she said that they can't rule out the fact that sexual assault can actually be one of the triggers for seizures and epilepsy. It can actually cause epilepsy in some fashion. That's my understanding anyway. And I think I also read something about it on the internet. Anyway, I was put on the right anti-epileptic drug for me, as it turned out, but it was a bit of a journey. I had to, at one point, go on to sodium valproate, and that was because I was having too much myoclonia. It was very effective, but I felt a bit overcalm, and luckily I was able to come up that after some days. But on the whole, I responded well to this particular anti-epileptic, which was for generalised epilepsy. Which was the one I would rather have had because I was very frightened of having partial seizures because of the type of medication I'd have to go on. So I was actually pleased, not because it's not a severe illness or as severe, it's just that the drug I would take is more suitable for me personally. Anyway, prior to this grand mal seizure, while I was on all these drugs, this concoction of drugs, I was walking back home after my psychotherapy. And in Vienna, I didn't have any offer of psychotherapy in London. And I paid for this privately in some fashion. I had some of it carried over by my insurance, which I paid in Vienna, and I paid for some of it myself. Anyway, I was walking back home. I was just about to publish an academic article on my thesis, one part of my thesis that I'd completed. I hadn't completed my thesis. I was in the early stages of my doctoral studies there, which I've discussed earlier in my career section. and how schizophrenia affected me there. And I was doing really well. I was really pleased. I just submitted an article and it was due for publication. And I was walking down the street near my home when suddenly a building collapsed on me just out of nowhere. And it was in March, and the snow wasn't heavy. There was a very light snow. But anyway, for some reason, suddenly a piece of debris landed here and another piece there on my right scapula. And I just remember this bit was okay. It wasn't that painful. It was very shocking. But I sort of did that. And then the bit on my back, it landed on my back, and I just remember the pain. I was in so much pain. I just suddenly went and fell forward, and I went unconscious for, I think the police said a few minutes or 4 or 5 minutes. I'm not sure. Anyway, I came to, and I just felt this horrific pain in my shoulders still. It was just horrific, and I think I was moaning, and some people were trying to call the ambulance for me, and I managed to sit up to get out of the way of danger. The people just wanted me to sit up, and I said, no, I can't move. And I managed to sit behind the building, a little bit back, so towards with my back against the wall of this building, so that if the debris collapsed again, I would be able to sit back from it, with my back against the wall of the building. And the ambulance came, and they walked me into the ambulance, and I had a brain scan, and luckily my brain was fine, although I'd had a bit of concrete hit me here, and my scapula, my shoulder was broken, my right shoulder. And the surgeon was very reassuring, and he felt that it would be a good recovery, I think. Anyway, I was 5 days in hospital with this, and it was okay. I had a bit of bleeding into my tricep, and that was the painful part. It was just achy and painful. It was okay, but it was okay. I think I had a drip, if I remember, and it was a very tough experience. And I was okay, but I'd just come off my drugs, and I was so stressed out, I thought as a precaution I should go back onto my antipsychotic medication, because I started to think, what if it's to do with my Russian studies on natural gas? What if someone shot me? What if someone shot at me? And there was an inquiry into the incident. The people who managed the building accepted responsibility without any question, and I was able. Their insurance gave me a small amount of money as compensation to get me through the bit of the PhD that I missed with these injuries. And I can't say I didn't have headaches. They set in, oddly enough, a while later. It was just, I had very few headaches before then. I was getting more and more headaches, and it was very difficult. But I then thought, well, I think it is just an accident. I really don't think anyone could possibly have done that. But there was never an explanation. And it was actually, it said in my notes, I wanted to know which bit of the building hit me, because the cornice, the whole chunk of the cornice fell off. And when I came to, I asked the ambulance driver what hit me. And he said, as I understood it, bricks. And in my medical notes, it said debris from the roof fell off. And when I walked past the building, I could see the cornice, a whole chunk. It was literally a pile of debris. And when I came to, I got lucky, because just a few feet in front of me was a pile of debris from the building that high. I was the only one affected by this building collapse. And the problem is other people's attitudes. All they could care about is the money I was going to get, which was never going to be much. It wasn't enough to compensate. Even, it was probably okay, but it wasn't enough really to compensate me for the time lost with these injuries from my work. And I had comments like, well, are you sure it happened? I mean, couldn't it have just been snow falling on you? And then I even had some family members saying, I believe the shoulder, but I really don't believe anything could have collapsed on your head. I mean, you'd be dead. You would be dead like that. And I just, I can't actually cope. There was no contention about my head injury. It literally wasn't any contest by it wasn't contested at all by any of the doctors. It's literally just a horrible thing to say. I mean, how would I just can't understand how anyone could be that hateful. Why would they dismiss my version of events? It wasn't even in question. I'm sure that the CCTV was released as part of the investigation, and certainly from the banks, it was a bank building, and everyone thought that because it was a bank it would be huge amounts of money, but it really has nothing to do with the bank. It's to do with how the building was managed, and they didn't find any responsibility on the part of the managers of the building. It was just, you get money, for some reason you get Schmerzgeld in Austria, which is called pain money, and it's you get money for every day of pain you have. And it wasn't easy to be in this situation, with people doubting that this accident had happened, either doubting it or just saying, oh, you're going to get money. And it was just horrible. I don't think like that. I needed the money to live. I couldn't have paid my rent or my food or drink or bills or anything if I hadn't received this money. It was very difficult. Anyway, that was a traumatic experience, and I just say other people's attitudes are horrific. I got 9 abusive texts in hospital from another family member, and it wasn't necessarily her fault that they all came, but she had a fault in her mobile phone, and she went 1 abusive text, and I got 9 abusive texts, and my battery ran out as a result, and so I couldn't make calls to people to explain how I was getting on. It was just horrific. As I say, I've got some wonderful family members, just wonderful. I love them so much. It's just no one can tolerate that. I was lying in a life or death situation, and I didn't think any excuse could justify that kind of abusive text. It was horrific. And anyway, so I did well after that. I just kept going, really. And I struggled with this epilepsy. It was very difficult, but I managed to keep going with it all and publish some more stuff on my Russian gas thesis in a peer-reviewed journal. But then I was just coming up to my viva, and I came down with a horrific virus. It was so horrific. I was just lying screaming and screaming and screaming. And I told you the rest since then. I had to fly back to London. And I said I became ill in my brain on the plane. It's very difficult to describe. But the voices started again. So the psychosis that people would see it as started to set in again. And they started to go, your frontal lobe lobotomy is going. You've had something that creates ice there and it's going to cut it out. And I just started to think, what's happening to my brain? And it got worse and worse and worse. I didn't want my neighbour to see my fear. My hands were shaking so much of fear that I covered them with a blanket so as not to upset anyone. I just sat there in a state of abject terror. And by the time I got home, I felt extremely ill. And I was staying at a relative's, and I felt extremely ill. And I just suddenly felt, I just was lying on the sofa. I didn't know what was happening to me. So I went upstairs to bed, and I was looking out of the window, and I suddenly started to feel nothing of pleasure, as though my whole frontal lobe lobotomy, though I'd had a frontal lobe lobotomy, I felt no pleasure whatsoever. And I was looking out. It was like going to purgatory. I could literally see a devil walking in flames, and it was agony. And I just thought, I can't bear this. I literally cannot live like this. And then God sort of came to me, and I am religious. I was religious, but I've never been this religious. I'm a Christian personally. But then I heard God say something. I literally had no pleasure. And he said, I went to sleep and I still had no pleasure when I woke up in the morning. And I was thinking of a frontal lobe seizure that I might have had. And I was terrified. And then I went to sleep again and still had no pleasure. Then God came to me and said, this is difficult. This is very difficult. I don't want to alarm people. It's very difficult because I'm now a Catholic. But I made an attempt on my life after I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. I couldn't bear that word. And I didn't get told it by a doctor. I literally saw it in a form that an occupational therapist had filled out for my benefits for me while I was recovering just after hospital. The first time I'd been in hospital was I had to go on to benefits for a while before going back to work. And I just ended up in hospital, and they discharged me immediately because I'd only taken, thankfully, a small dose of pills. And I don't want to, it's just horrific. I'm not proud of myself, but anyway, I was in despair. And the occupational therapist, yes, I had to put something down to get your benefits, but the fact is, it said in all my notes that too. I don't know why no one discussed this diagnosis with me, and never has. They literally have never said what it is, why I had it, why it's particular to me. I literally don't understand who these callous people are in medicine. I was, so this was all very difficult, but God said to me something. He reproached me, I felt. You made an attempt on your life, and he said, imagine I wanted to go. I wanted to commit suicide again, but I was very frightened of this hell I was in. And God said, you tried to take your life. Imagine if everyone decided to take their life all at once, except for one child who didn't, and leave them alone in the world, a sort of hell as such for this child. And I suddenly realised something. I said, okay, Lord, I will vow I will never commit suicide again. I will never, ever do it again. I will never attempt this again. And suddenly he said, start to pray. Just whatever you do, keep talking. If you don't talk, you can't get better from this. So I just started praying and praying and praying. And I started to have these wonderful spiritual experiences. And suddenly the whole horror of this experience with what might have been a frontal lobe seizure just ended up in this wonderful spiritual world, and I haven't looked back. And I have read online something interesting, which is some people acknowledge that people with schizophrenia sometimes make sense of their ideas by turning to religion. And in my case, it's worked really well. I have now a wonderful quality of life. I was in despair about it all. I couldn't have babies. I couldn't see any hope in a relationship. But I left this whole relationship idea behind. I just didn't mind. It was something spiritual. I know out there is a family for me in heaven one day. And I don't think God would deprive me of a family just because it's heaven. I don't think that's his idea, but that's my view. And everyone, of course, has their own way of looking at things. And I'm just very happy now because I understand everything. I've had God permanently talking to me and telling me about things, and he's just, I just am very, very happy with my life because I have religion in my life. I can't imagine life without it. And so as such, although I've had these horrific traumatic experiences and no one's said I'm not schizophrenic, they keep pursuing the idea that I've got paranoid schizophrenia. I don't know what these paranoid delusions were meant to have been. They've never told me. But anyway, they keep writing down whatever they feel like. And I just have to ride above it. I don't care for their opinion. Why should I? And I had one, when I complained to PALS, the hospital said, it wasn't all negative. We said some positives too. And what I'd like to say to these people, if you've got any negatives to say about me, don't bother with the positives. I have someone else to look to. You can keep your opinions to yourself in future. And so anyway, you can overcome a lot. I now have no seizures. I'm not on my anti-epileptics. I'm just on one drug now, my antipsychotic. And although I get very tired and stuff like that, I have my own world and my own way of doing things. And I feel like my own independent self. Thank you.